Zan been on a tear in Modern as of late. These players headed in opposite directions today. Zan started the day 6-3. He's now 8-3. Andrew started the day 8-1. But they meet here in round number 12.
Yeah, this Arclight red deck, it is very cool. The 8-1 finish, that kind of surprised me. This deck is definitely good enough to hang in Modern, but this 8-3 record looks to be a little more appropriate.
Zan on a 6-card hand here on the draws. We'll start the game with a Monastery Swift Spear. And Zan going to help him out. He has to shock for Breeding Pool to get that Aether Vial into play. Now, traditionally of Burn v Bant Spirits, do you have something you like in that matchup?
Burn generally pretty strong against Bant Spirits. It's definitely a matchup where you can leverage Searing Blaze very meaningfully, and it kind of depends on how much sideboard action Bant is bringing to the table. Sometimes you see Core Firewalker, that can be huge in that matchup, and that would also be huge in this matchup. In game 1, definitely on the draw, I think Spirits has some ground to make up.
Turn 2 for Andrew Schneider. That fair deck Manamorphose pumps Monastery Swift Spear. All he can really do with the mana is suspend Rift Bolt, so he hits Zan for 2 more.
Not the most exciting turn.
Now you see his hand Fiery Temper, 2 more lands, and Arclight Phoenix.
This hand's great if he draws exactly Faithless Looting.
Yeah.
It's also great if he draws Tormenting Voice.
Supreme Phantom from Zan. So 1-3 could serve as a good blocker here. Go back to Andrew. Where will the Rift Bolt go? And it'll actually take care of the blocker.
And with the Vial on 1, best Zan could do is flash in a Mausoleum Wanderer. That would not be able to counter the Rift Bolt.
Ooh, and one of my favorite cards here, the one of Flame Jab, picked up that turn by Andrew Schneider. He'll attack with Swift Spear for 2, put Zan down to 12, and say go. He's got a Fiery Temper in hand.
Yeah, so Flame Jab has Retrace, which lets you discard lands to cast out of the graveyard. The Schneider's deck would really love to be able to discard spells to that ability.
So, Ryan, how do you feel about this one? So Andrew could have thrown that Fiery Temper upstairs for 3 damage and pumped. Instead, he passed. Zan vialed in a Noble Hierarch, and Andrew actually spent an entire Fiery Temper removing it.
He really doesn't want to get hit by a Collected Company, which I think is the primary motivation for that.
Okay. See, now he'll just cast Arclight Phoenix. First time we've seen that one happen, but it's a 3-2 Flying Haste.
Yeah, that one, fairly reasonable to just hard cast in your standard deck. A little more awkward to do so in Modern, but it does have haste.
And he will just swing the Arclight Phoenix.
So this is a situation where Zan both has 2 mana up and a Vial on 2. Pretty easy to make something like a Rattle Chains or a Selfless Spirit. He's okay trading the Phoenix with that, not the Swift Spear.
Another land by Zan, Vial up to 3, but he just passes. Zan is down to 9. Back to Schneider we go. His hand is a Flame Jab and 2 Mountains. So he has 3 damage. He actually has 3 spells. I like this swing. If Arclight Phoenix dies, he has all 3 spells in hand for it.
Right.
Reflector Mage. Vialed into play by Zan. That will pick up the Arclight Phoenix and block the Swift Spear. A pretty decent exchange.
Yeah, and kind of what you were saying with the Flame Jabs rolled up, it made sense to me to wait until the turn where you want to cast a bunch of Flame Jabs before you attack with the Swift Spear, because then you get the 3 prowess triggers. He kind of just gave away the Swift Spear here.
He's going to try to use a Flame Jab and 1 Retrace to finish off that Reflector Mage. Now Zan will respond.
Might be getting this caught under a Spell Queller.
I am interested in just how much removal, or burn rather, Andrew's willing to point at Zan's creatures in this matchup. That he's willing to spend at card and an additional card trying to finish off Reflector Mage is a heavy endorsement.
It seems to me that the line of attacking with the Swift Spear was overly aggressive. He just wanted to attack with the Phoenix and see what happened. And these Flame Jabs were throwing good cards after bad. He was trying to make up value he lost by at least cleaning up the Reflector Mage, and he's just getting punished in a big way.
Yeah, Zan attacks back for 4. Right now, Schneider's hand is a land and an Arclight Phoenix, and that Flame Jab is gone, so drawing another Mountain this turn isn't going to help much. And now Spell Queller will take care of the Phoenix. Andrew is on only lands.
And it won't take much for Zan to close from here.
No.
A 3-turn clock on the table. As a Horizon Canopy as a redraw if his hand's not already good.
Drogskull Captain means those spells under the Spell Quellers, they're going to stay there and attack in for 8, and we have a 2-turn clock. Andrew down to 8.
Yeah, very significant upgrade there. And we know that Schneider's hand is just pretty garbage.
Lava Spike, not going to do it. He picks up the cards. Zan Syed takes the first.
Yeah, not great draw there for Schneider. He could have played a little bit differently, but I don't think it would have mattered. little heavy on lands. The Flame Jab is good against the turn 1 Noble Hierarch, but otherwise pretty poor in the matchup.
Yeah, there was some burn pointed at creatures. I think we saw some flame, like a Fiery Temper pointed at creatures, a Flame Jab pointed at creatures. It's possible if that, I don't know, does it feel if that all goes upstairs, does that last turn Lava Spike matter? Or does he lose anyway?
I kind of was on board with the targeting the Noble Hierarch because the mana advantage could snowball. The way it played out was Zan missing the land drop was kind of the worst case scenario for Schneider. And the way it played out, he might have had enough burn.
Let's look at the sideboard for the players. On Andrew Schneider's side, he has Tormod's Crypts, Molten Rain, Shrine of Burning Rage, Dragon's Claw, Anger of the Gods, and a 1 of Risk Factor.
This seems like the kind of matchup where you're probably expecting the Bant Spirits player. They definitely have Path to Exile. They could be reaching for Rest in Peace. If he knows what Schneider's on, he knows there's Bedlam Revelers. And that's the kind of matchup where I do like just reaching for the Shrine of Burning Rage, just having a card on the battlefield that can just close the game by itself.
Yeah, no, Andrew's been using that in matchups where he expects Graveyard Hate.
Right.
And on that note, Zan does have some. 3 copies of Rest in Peace.
Yep.
And 2 copies of Tormod's Crypt, depending on how much Graveyard Hate he wants here.
I think in this matchup, Rest in Peace, not Tormod's Crypt.
All right, other cards, Damping Sphere, Path to Exile, Knight of Autumn, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, Gaddock Teague, and Detention Sphere.
So the Path to Exiles, they're quite good against this deck. Whether you're hitting Swift Spear or Arclight Phoenix, those are both pretty good targets. Thalia can be fine. This is a deck that's trying to cast a lot of spells on the turn. I don't mind having access to Thalia. And I can see Knight of Autumn being pretty good here, actually. Just gaining 4 life is reasonable. If you cover the graveyards and you can push off the Bedlam Reveler element of Schneider's deck, then just gaining 4 life is a huge deal. It's also an answer to Shrine of Burning Rage, if that's on Zan's radar.
There was a lot of feature of Schneider last round, so he may know about that one. Either way, the matchup does seem to improve on Zan's side, post-sideboard here.
Yes.
Now, those of you watching us on Twitch.tv, thank you so much. If you are not a subscriber, we do have our Twitch subscription program. You get a custom emoticon and badge if you're a subscriber to our channel. And also, when we head to our elimination rounds later today, you get a vote in the players and the decks you would like to see. You can subscribe at any time over on our Twitch page and join us in the feature match area.
Yeah, we've had some pretty cool decks this weekend. I'm pretty big on this Arclight Phoenix deck. It's pretty fun to watch. Schneider in a tough spot here. I know you're excited that we have some Amulet Titan players in good position.
We do. We have 4 copies of Amulet Titan making it into Day 2. Now, it is a large Day 2 field, so that's about 3% of the meta, but that's pretty high for Amulet.
Especially with 2 of them coming into Day 2 at 8 and 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Will Pulliam picking up right now X and 2 with Amulet Titan.
You have, looking at the metagame breakdown too, there's 3 copies of something called Grixis Whir.
That one's picking up steam. Yeah, the Grixis Whir invention.
I have an approximate idea of what that is.
Well, Jody Keith sleeved that up last weekend in the Dallas Open. We caught that in the early rounds on Saturday. Did not convert into a big finish at the end of the tournament, however. For Syed, he does have a Modern Open win this year in Atlanta. That was with Infect. Last weekend, he top-8'd in Dallas as well with Humans. So, of course, he's going to play neither of those. He's going to play Bant Spirits. He has a top 4 finish in Worcester as well, playing Bant Spirits. So, Zan has been crushing it in Modern with a range of different decks.
Yes, and the Spirits deck, definitely a deck that he knows well. He's played multiple different versions of this. Very much in tune with how this deck works.
And as you mentioned before, last time we saw him play Spirits was actually Azorius Spirits. He's one of the first players to play that when our Core Set 2019 came out with Supreme Phantom.
Yes.
Interestingly, even though he's the Bant Spirits deck, he's still, he's on, it is Aether Vials.
Yeah, that's been something that we've seen recently is they start playing. Typically, you actually see 3 copies of Vial. Zan's actually on 4 there, and he does also have 4 collected companies. And he's also playing 4 Reflector Mage. Sometimes you see 2 copies in the Spirit stack, but this is a very strong endorsement of Reflector Mage. He's trimmed the 4th Selfless Spirit. He's only playing 2 Rattle Chains. So that's how he's making room for this kind of stuff. I know Rattle Chains is definitely a card that players have played fewer copies of as the deck has started to play Aether Vial. You don't really need it as much.
But the 4 Aether Vial is new. Looking back at the list he played to the top 4 finish at the Team Open in Worcester in July. Similar list, he had 4 Path to Exile in the deck. This time he's actually, the Vials have taken the place of Paths. He does not have removal in the main.
Yeah, just those Reflector Mages in that kind of slot.
We are underway for game number 2. Schneider starting off on a Lava Spike. And here we go. The rest of the hand looks like we have a Faithless Looting and 2 Fiery Tempers to go with a Bedlam Reveler. We could get some pretty exciting stuff off this.
We'll need to get some other stuff in his graveyard first, but there's some potential explosiveness.
Yeah. You can loot away a Fiery Temper and then Madness it for a little bit of, well, I would say card advantage, except Faithless Looting's card disadvantage. So it makes Faithless Looting just a straight cantrip.
When you attack on the fact that you can flash it back, that's still pretty dang powerful.
Faithless Looting for Schneider, drawing 2, draws into Rift Bolt and Manamorphose.
There's a Needle Drop in the holdings. I think that card is definitely weaker in this matchup.
And he's going to discard both Fiery Tempers. He'll Madness one of them. And again, he's showing preference for the creatures as he goes ahead and takes care of Noble Hierarch instead of going upstairs.
Yeah, the turn 1 Bolt the Bird makes sense. And part of that also is the Arclight red deck as opposed to a traditional burn deck. If Schneider has Bedlam Revelers to gas back up, so he can point some removal at creature spells and not worry too much about it.
Manamorphose here from Schneider on turn 3. Zan did take a full 3 damage to make that turn 1 Noble Hierarch. It was fetched into Temple Garden. Schneider's hand is Rift Bolt, Needle Drop, Bedlam Reveler, and 2 more lands. He has 2 mana floating off that Manamorphose.
His hand's pretty awkward in terms of what he can do this turn. He can make a land drop, and he has 5 instants and sorceries and just cast a Bedlam Reveler, turning 3 into 3. He can suspend or cast a Rift Bolt. I kind of like just casting Rift Bolt on Supreme Phantom right now.
And that's what he does. Yeah, that on the surface right now is the most powerful thing he can do. It does make this Needle Drop stranded. Zan replaces Supreme Phantom and misses a land drop, however.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen the Needle Drop discarded previously instead of the second Fiery Temper.
Well, looks like he will get to use the Needle Drop as he draws Lava Spike for the turn, so 3 upstairs, and now he'll Needle Drop for a 4th and draw a card.
Well, imagine the alternative, though. Let's say he still has the Fiery Temper instead. You cast the Bedlam Reveler, discard the Temper, Madness out on the Phantom, draw 3 cards.
That's not bad. Now, a little bit of a miss on the Needle Drop. He draws a 2nd Bedlam Reveler, so shrugs, casts it, says go.
And he'd be drawing that Reveler off of this Reveler.
But look at the drop Bedlam Reveler. It was into Manamorphose and 2 Lightning Bolts.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, now I got my... I don't know if these burn spells are going to keep going at creatures on this case.
Right.
Draws Monastery Swift Spear. He will cast Monastery Swift Spear. Manamorphose. To pump... Well, both creatures have prowess.
Yes. This is a lethal turn if Zan doesn't have anything.
Looks like we drew a Faithless Looting. Andrew will cast it.
Probably looking at discarding whatever cards he draws off of it.
Yeah, 2 mountains, absolutely.
Yeah, that's easy.
Still 1 mana floating. So he'll swing both. They have prowessed twice. Zan's going to flash Rattle Chains into play, and Schneider's going to bolt a Rattle Chain, which now means prowess up to 3, so it's 6 and 4 damage. That does add up to 10. Game 2 goes to Andrew Schneider.
Well, still had all D's showing the 2nd Lightning Bolt, but that's whatever. And we're on to game 3.
Yeah, some powerful stuff. And again, I want to look at the strategy Andrew's had on this match, where you're seeing a lot of burn spells being pointed at every creature on Zan's side. There are some matchups where I think you'd see the burn player, if it's fair to call this burn, I certainly would. You know, one of the tricks with burns, you don't bolt their creatures very often, right? You send most of it upstairs.
Yeah, if you have a Searing Blaze, that's what you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not Lightning Bolt.
You're seeing lightning. All the Lightning Bolts and Rift Bolts seem to be going at creatures.
Right. And what he's able to do, though, is if he's able to use Faithless Looting to discard an Arclight Phoenix, or he had access to Bedlam Reveler, you saw that game, he was setting up for a Bedlam Reveler starting with his opening hand. Throwing a card away on a creature doesn't really matter. You make up the cards later, you make up the damage later.
And that's exactly what he did. Once he managed to bridge the way to Bedlam Reveler, it didn't really matter that he'd given away these cards earlier in trades. The draw 3 was just good enough.
Right.
It feels like, in that sense, despite being a mono-red Lava Spike deck, he's taking the control role in this matchup.
And that's what I like about this deck. That's what the strength of it relative to traditional burn deck is. You have a little bit more play going on, a little bit more control over what you want to do, and that is a nice position to be in.
Andrew Schneider, someone we haven't seen on the tour in a long time. However, saw him at 8-1 yesterday, and despite a rough go of it here, from Atlanta, Georgia, he has 5 Open top 8s along with 3 wins. All these you're mentioning were from the 2-day Open era, all of them wins in Legacy with Blue-Red Delver.
And that's a deck that has a lot of similarities to Arclight Red as well. You're talking about a burn deck that is going to try to play an interactive game. How about the Price of Progress deck playing Force of Will? This is nothing terribly new to Schneider.
No, it is still similar, despite these are red decks that play, it's interesting, right? They're really similar. They're red decks that basically play Lava Spike, but also play Control.
Right.
Very specific archetype, but it seems like something he knows how to do.
Yeah, these decks are adjacent to the sort of decks that I like to play. These ones, they're not for the faint of heart.
Zan, turn 1, Aether Vial. First game where he will get to be on the play. And for Schneider, we'll see a Rift Bolt. It's interesting, right? When your strategy is to point and burn spells at creatures, not to point them at players, spending a turn 1 Rift Bolt is pretty funny. Because you don't know where it's going yet.
Right.
Like, okay, I guess it's a Lava Spike. Zan just passed. But
he's also playing Lava Spike, you know.
Yeah.
When you have to pay 3 mana at sorcery speed, your Rift Bolt's not doing too much.
Needle Drop, the draw for the turn from Andrew. He'll go cast Manamorphose. Yeah, so guess you check for Mausoleum Wanderer. Draws Monastery Swift Spear. Casts that, 1 red mana floating. He'll have to pre-combat Needle Drop if he'd like to attack.
I think that's fine.
Instead, he will suspend Rift Bolt, and we'll see if an attack's coming. Still is. It's no prowess, so here's Mausoleum Wanderer. Ooh, and Zan with Rattle Chains and Wanderer gets a free block to kill the Swift Spear.
Yeah, that was another pretty aggressive attack with the Swift Spear.
Yeah. Well, and there's some good patience here on Zan's side. You know, could have vialed in the Wanderer to counter a Manamorphose, didn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the that's just cycling, right?
Yeah.
It's mana neutral cycling, but yeah, I love the way Zan played it.
And he got rewarded big time. A free card. Yeah, a smile on his face. He knows he got him there.
Right. Yes, that's what I really adore about these fair Manamorphose decks is you're used to seeing Manamorphose being cast out of decks that are pretty degenerate. But this is a deck that's playing a pretty honest game. You don't have to care too much about their Manamorphoses.
I think it's putting the term fair Manamorphose to the test, right?
Right.
Like, you're right, he's not playing Storm, and so it is fairer than Storm. But what I think we're learning is there is no such thing as a fair Manamorphose.
Yeah, that card's just really good.
Rift Bolt shoots down Supreme Phantom for Schneider. Draws into Lava Spike.
Yeah, this is a game where Schneider is just behind, so he definitely has to target the creatures.
Yeah, it's her hand right now, Lava Spike, Needle Drop, 2 Fiery Tempers. It feels like if he can find a Faithless Looting, he can piece all of this together, but until then, I don't like where this is going.
Faithless Looting Double Temper would be great, assuming the Faithless Looting resolves, and that's part of the tension in this matchup.
Yeah, so the line he chooses instead is to just hold back here and Fiery Temper something, but with a swing from Zan, there's a worry. As Zan says go, when he goes to his Fiery Temper, Drog's Captain could just blow him out.
Yes.
He'll try for it. Does Zan have it? I guess at very worst, Zan can just counter it with Mausoleum Wanderer.
Yeah, and that seems to be the target.
Okay. Looks like no Drog's Captain.
If he had something like Spell Queller, I agree with waiting on that. This is a deck that has a lot of 3-point damage spells that could just answer the Queller.
Lava Spike upstairs. Doesn't really go anywhere else. Sand to 14, here's Needle Drop. Zan goes to 13. And looks like Arclight Phoenix was the pickup for Schneider. Land and pass.
This is one of the weaknesses of the deck is we've seen Schneider draw a lot of Arclight Phoenixes that he's had difficulty getting into his graveyard.
And Ryan, we're seeing an end step crack of a fetch, and we might see Collected Company.
That would be bad news for Schneider.
I like the patient on Zan's side. If he has this Collected Company, there was, I think, some temptation when Schneider went for the Fiery Temper to try to company into a Drogskill Captain. But he just didn't, which I like. He's going to go 6 cards randomly out of the deck.
These cards will be on top. These are the ones you get to look at.
I think if Zan accepts this shortcut, it's fine. It's kind of weird, but... yeah.
Whatever.
Technically, you don't shuffle for $2 bills. Yeah, we're table judges. Yeah, it's there. This is fine. Spell Queller, is that 2 Quellers?
Looks be... is that? Yeah, I think so.
Pair of 2/3s is just fine. These guys both from the Atlanta area. Presume maybe they have played each other a couple of times. And Thalia from Zan as he hits Schneider down to 5.
And that's just another 2-power creature here. So Schneider has to remove 2 things, and he has to do it through a Thalia. That Fiery Temper in hand is not conducive to that.
He will make Arclight Phoenix, but extends the hand.
Yeah, so that's going to do it. Zan Syed takes the match with Bant Spirits 2-1 over Andrew Schneider and Arclight Red. If Schneider's going to make the top 8, he's got a tough road ahead of him. Zan is still very much live, though. He needs to pick up some more wins as well. Yeah, for Schneider, still having a rough go of it. Kind of mentioned these players are going in opposite directions, and that's going to continue. Zan